Could Ellen's love for her husband truly save them, or was she destined to fall under the dark spell of Nosferatu forever? Will Thomas ever break free from the demon's grasp, or will he lose everything he holds dear to the vampire's curse? This eerie tale begins with Ellen, a young woman who, in the stillness of night, prays for the presence of some otherworldly being. Suddenly, a voice, inhuman and haunting, answers, claiming to have been stirred from an eternal void. A shadowy figure materializes behind the curtains, declaring that Ellen is too pure for a humanity unworthy of her. As the demon asks if she desires to join him for eternity, Ellen, without a moment's doubt, swears her allegiance, and in that instant, she is overwhelmed by a pleasure beyond description. But as she catches sight of the horrifying figure, a searing pain unlike anything she's ever known courses through her. Years later, Ellen awakens, calling out for her husband, Thomas, who responds from the very same room. She tells him she had a troubling nightmare, but he reassures her, urging her to let it go. Ellen recalls the fleeting moments of their honeymoon and attempts to rekindle their intimacy. However, Thomas gently explains that he has pressing matters to attend to, kissing her goodbye before stepping out. Stepping outside, Thomas navigates the bustling streets of Germany in 1838, rushing toward his destination, a real estate agency where he arrives late. His presence is acknowledged, but it's not the boss who greets him, doing so without any fuss. Thomas expresses his gratitude for the opportunity to work there, especially since he needs a steadier income after his recent marriage. After an exchange of somewhat awkward congratulations, Thomas reassures them of his dedication to the company. The head of the agency informs him of a deal with a distinguished foreign client, a nobleman looking to purchase a property in the city to spend his final years in peace. Though the mansion is in disrepair, the Count specifically requested it and is willing to offer a generous sum. To finalize the deal, Thomas must travel to a small country east of Bohemia, as the Count insisted on signing the contract in person. Despite feeling uneasy, Thomas agrees, knowing it will secure his permanent position, even as the rain pours down. Later, he returns home to tell Ellen that he will be away for 6 weeks. He tells her that his accommodations have already been arranged, but Ellen, distracted by a wilted bouquet, pleads with him not to go. She attempts to share her dream, but Thomas gently reminds her that the doctor has advised her to move on from such things. Still, Ellen feels compelled to recount the dream she had on their wedding day. In it, she walked toward the altar through a fierce storm, only to find that Thomas was not there. Instead, death awaited her. In the dream, Ellen felt a strange sense of happiness as she gazed upon their guests, now lifeless and decayed. Yet her tears fell in sorrow and despair. Her husband urged her not to speak of such things, offering comfort as he promised that when he returned, they would have enough money to buy a house and give her everything she deserved. Despite her reluctance, Ellen accompanied Thomas that evening. The couple met with Friedrich, Thomas's friend, and they exchanged congratulations on their successes. Friedrich shared the news that he was expecting his third child, which delighted both men. Thomas mentioned that he and Ellen planned to have children once their finances were more stable, assuring Friedrich that he would repay the money he borrowed as soon as he returned. Meanwhile, Ellen would stay with Friedrich's family while Thomas tucked his daughters into bed. Thomas apologized to Ellen for having to leave her for a few weeks, but this time she understood the opportunity and was more accepting. The couple reconciled and they continued to enjoy their honeymoon. Later that night, as Thomas left, Ellen, feeling a deep connection, cut a lock of his hair and placed it in a locket, keeping it safely as a memento. Hancock performed a dark ritual, using his own blood to confirm everything was done as instructed. The next morning, Ellen expressed her pride, and Thomas promised to stay safe, asking her to write daily. She gave him a locket, and they reaffirmed their love, knowing the sacrifice was for a better future. As Thomas left, the village children greeted him with music and dancing, but the celebration quickly turned sour when the villagers mocked him. One man demanded the gypsies leave, and the innkeeper warned Thomas not to mention Count Orlok, urging him to return home. Thomas secured a room by paying double the rate and retired for the night. An old woman warned him not to visit the castle, urging him to fear his own shadow. That night, he awoke to a disturbing sight: a group transporting a naked woman on horseback to the vampire's tomb. Shocked, he shouted at them to stop. He jolted awake in his bed, his feet covered in mud. Stepping outside, he found the village deserted and his horse gone, forcing him to continue on foot. As night fell, Thomas walked a dark path when a carriage emerged from the fog, stopping abruptly in front of him. Without assistance, he climbed aboard, realizing it was headed for Castle Orlok. Uneasy, he felt the tension rise as the carriage sped toward the imposing gates. Upon arrival, the doors slammed shut behind him, and a monstrous voice chastised him for being late. The Count, upset it was already midnight, led him to an upper floor lit by a flickering fireplace. He insisted they sign the contract immediately, demanding Thomas call him "my lord" as a mark of his noble lineage. With growing unease, Thomas sat as the Count, eager to finalize the deal, pressed him to comply. Orlok moved closer, pouring a dark drink with his claw-like fingers. As Thomas barely touched the glass, the Count revealed his ghostly face. Thomas voiced his concerns about the local customs, mentioning the nomads he saw entering the birch forest, but Orlok dismissed it, explaining the villagers clung to outdated traditions. Thomas continued, describing how the villagers exhumed a corpse, but Orlok interrupted with a loud shout, causing Thomas to tremble. The Count, visibly annoyed, expressed a desire to move to a city free from the grotesque legends of this town. He urged Thomas to eat, but in his panic, Thomas cut his finger. Orlok yelled at him to be more careful and offered to ease his pain, guiding him toward the fire where eerie stone statues seemed to move. Meanwhile, Ellen and Anna walked with the children. Ellen asked if Anna had ever felt like a doll, controlled by others, and spoke of an inexplicable feeling of destiny drawing near, confessing she felt lost without Thomas. At the castle, Thomas wakes on the floor, searching for someone in the empty halls. He notices a bite mark on his chest, recalling the Count forcing him to sign an ancient agreement in a foreign language. Orlok became fascinated by Ellen's picture in the locket, commenting on Thomas's luck in finding love. He handed Thomas a bag of money and urged him to complete the deal, insisting he stay at the castle due to his illness. Thomas protests but takes the locket with him. In the present, Thomas examines the bite marks and searches for an escape, finding a dark passage leading to a coffin with strange carvings. Inside, he discovers Orlok's withered body, realizing the Count is a vampire. As he grabs a weapon, Orlok suddenly rises and chases him. Though Thomas briefly escapes, the Count warns him that Ellen will only dream of him from now on. Meanwhile, Ellen sleepwalks, and Friedrich calls a doctor, who suggests possible causes for her condition and advises not to overreact, recommending rest and, if necessary, restraining her to prevent accidents. Before leaving, the doctor increases Ellen's sedative dosage after hearing her faint moans. Thomas wakes up surrounded by monstrous creatures in the castle and, desperate to escape, throws himself off a cliff into the sea. Meanwhile, Ellen grows restless, and Friedrich promises to send someone to the real estate agency, urging him to be more understanding, but he insists they shouldn't indulge Ellen's whims. Anna, prioritizing her friend's well-being, convinces Friedrich to call the doctor again. Their conversation is interrupted by Ellen's strange behavior near the riverbank. Elsewhere, a doctor examines a new patient, Herr Nock, who claims to serve a dark master, ranting about curses and death. He violently lunges at the doctor before being restrained. Back at the Harding estate, Ellen convulses again. Friedrich learns of Hancock's worsening condition and religious fanaticism, with disturbing statements about his lord coming to reign over the town's corpses. Thomas is found in a river by a woman and nuns who rescue him. They perform a ritual to awaken him, and when he regains consciousness, he whispers Orlok's name. The nuns tell him the devil has captured his soul, urging him to stay in the church for protection. Friedrich, advised to consult a Swiss physician with knowledge of alchemy and the occult, hears troubling news about Ellen's condition and yearns for Thomas's return. The nuns warn Thomas that the Count cannot leave the cursed land where he was buried, but Thomas knows Orlok is heading toward his home in search of Ellen on a ship. The Count's coffin is traveling to unite with Ellen for eternity. Meanwhile, the doctor and Friedrich visit Dr. von Franz, who, after hearing about Ellen's condition, astoundingly deduces what's happening to her. Von Franz explains her prolonged sleepwalking episodes and her ability to foresee events. As Thomas, despite his health, secures a horse to return to Ellen, the ship faces difficulties. Upon arriving, Von Franz insists on examining Ellen, showing respect and curiosity about her condition, which has affected her since childhood. Ellen describes her visions, including her loneliness and a mysterious presence that has haunted her since childhood. Von Franz observes her trance-like state, noting she has been drained of blood and shows no reaction to pain. Ellen prophesies a bloody future for the town, confirming Von Franz's fears that she is possessed by a spirit or demon. The doctor warns the Harding couple that Ellen is in grave danger and advises they stop administering sedatives while closely watching her. Aboard the ship, sailors discard the bodies of their fallen comrades, realizing the plague is tied to the cargo. One man opens the coffin and is attacked by rats, followed by Count Orlok, who is now freed. Meanwhile, Hancock escapes, attacking a guard and proclaiming that his master has arrived. Ellen, sensing something, rushes to the door to find Thomas collapsed in exhaustion. Overjoyed, he tells her he has the locket. Late at night, guards inform Friedrich that a ship carrying the plague has crashed. Orlok arrives at his property, discussing the real estate agent and the need to bring Ellen to him, but the pact requires her willing consent. The town is overrun by plague-bearing rats, and Thomas recovers under Ellen's care. Ellen tries to apologize to Anna, but Anna is relieved that things are improving. Doctors examine a body found on the ship, confirming the plague, and Von Franz realizes the situation's severity. He orders a search for Hernock, who has escaped. Darkness spreads over the town as Orlok's influence grows. Thomas experiences suffocating sensations and pushes Ellen away in his sleep. Later, Ellen asks Anna to stay the night, while Friedrich refuses to believe they're haunted, but Von Franz insists they face death itself. Friedrich refuses to accept the truth, dismissing Von Franz's warnings as superstitions. Von Franz, determined, explains that they must face the darkness to fight it, revealing the true enemy, a vampire known as Nosferatu. In the dead of night, Ellen encounters Count Orlok, who reminds her of their twisted fate. Despite his claims, Ellen refuses to accept him and defends her love for Thomas. Orlok threatens her, giving her 3 nights to change her mind, or he will make Thomas suffer. After waking from a nightmare, Ellen finds Anna surrounded by plague-ridden rats. The hospital is overwhelmed, and Anna, consumed by the plague, asks Ellen what's happening to her. Ellen tries to warn Friedrich of the evil, but he insists she and Thomas leave the house for safety. Ellen, desperate, pleads for compassion for Thomas, who is still gravely ill, but Friedrich refuses to listen. She accuses him of harboring hatred toward her, while Friedrich dismisses her, claiming he's done everything to protect them. Meanwhile, the doctors realize they must find Hernock, who has made a pact with Nosferatu. At his office, they find a corpse with mysterious writings. Thomas, barely able to stand, and Ellen continue their journey home, avoiding prying eyes. Von Franz, frustrated by Friedrich's dismissal, explains that the only way to defeat Nosferatu is to return him to his grave before dawn. However, Friedrich refuses to hear more, focusing on the plague instead. Ellen tends to Thomas, confessing that she summoned the demon years ago, and it became a torment that haunts her still. She begs Thomas not to touch her, accusing him of forgetting about her during his time at the castle. Ellen accuses Thomas of betraying her by signing a pact with the Count, questioning where the money is that was supposed to secure their future. As she struggles with pain, she convulses violently, and Thomas rushes to get help. Ellen wakes and accuses him of failing to satisfy her like the Count does in her dreams. In response, Thomas tries to prove his worth, but a vision of the Count's influence halts him. Ellen, on the verge of transforming into a demon, sings joyously, but Thomas reassures her of his love and vows to destroy the demon. Meanwhile, Von Franz learns that Ellen must declare her love for the demon before dawn to break his curse. In the dead of night, Orlok kills the Harding family, and Friedrich accuses Ellen of responsibility. Von Franz reveals a bite mark confirming they're dealing with a real demon. They plan to destroy Nosferatu's coffin before dawn, but Ellen knows she must offer herself to the Count to save them. The doctor fears that Nosferatu may be immune to their attacks, leaving Ellen as their only hope. Ellen asks Thomas to promise he'll only return once the Count is dead. As Thomas searches for Friedrich, he finds him dead beside his wife. They burn their bodies and head to Orlok's mansion. Ellen opens her window to summon the Count, while the others fight their way through the mansion to destroy him. In the chaos, they accidentally kill Herr Nock, but Thomas refuses to stay and watch the mansion burn, determined to save Ellen. Ellen waits for the demon in her room, dressed as a bride. Orlok emerges from the shadows, asking if she willingly accepts him. She confirms her decision to renew their bond, sealing their pact with a kiss. The ritual intensifies as Orlok drinks her blood, while her husband rushes to save her. As the rooster crows and sunlight fills the room, Orlok begins to weep blood and succumbs. By the time her husband arrives, it's too late. Ellen has sacrificed herself to free the city from Nosferatu's curse. As we reach the end of this journey, Ellen's sacrifice shines as a beacon of love and courage. Despite losing so much, Thomas finds the strength to overcome the darkness. The lesson here is simple, yet powerful. Love can light even the darkest paths, no matter the cost. So, what do you think? Was Ellen's fate sealed, or was her love enough to break the curse? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heart-touching stories. Remember, even the darkest night gives way to the dawn.